To the Senate Standing Committee on Education. This is our 8th meeting of the session. I do call this meeting to order. Mariah, if you would, please call the roll.
Senator Carroll.
Here.
Senator Givens. Senator Harper Angel. Senator Higdon. Senator Kerr. Senator Meredith. Senator Neal. Senator Southworth. Senator Stivers. Senator Thomas. Senator Wilson.
Here.
Senator West.
Here.
Chair Wise.
Here. We do have a quorum. We're duly constituted to do business. I want to thank everybody that came off the floor so quickly to get over here for this meeting tonight. We do have one bill for consideration. It's Senate Bill 265, an act relating to the Kentucky State University Board of Regents and declaring an emergency. Senator Givens is the bill sponsor. Senator Givens, if you would make your way to the table with any guests that you may have that are testifying alongside you, sir.
Chairman Wise, members of the committee, thank you for the chance to present Senate Bill 265 for your consideration, and thank you for calling a specially called Education Committee meeting. Time is of the essence on this legislation as it pertains to the Kentucky State University Board of Regents and the role the Senate plays in the confirmation process. As many of you know, we're approaching that point in time in the session when things start happening rapidly. This process of appointing Board of Regent members requires some time for the list of names to be gathered and for the governor to make those appointments, and so we'd like to get this completed while in session. Legislation, as you have it before you, is rather self-explanatory. It requires the governor's post-secondary education nominating committee to submit 16 nominations by date certain of March the 26th, from which the governor shall select 8. Those will be then appointed on or before April the 1st and will then go through the Senate confirmation process. All of us in the room are aware of the vital role that KSU plays in our post-secondary landscape. In addition, all of us in the room are well aware of the challenges that have come to light in the fiscal management and the challenges in producing graduates that KSU has faced. This is the first step in a piece of legislation to realign this board, refocus this board, give the governor the chance to basically reconstitute the board itself as we get ready to move on through the legislative session. All of you are also likely aware and following the news around House Bill 250, which is the piece of legislation that came over from Representative Tipton in the House as it relates to KSU. That's a piece of legislation we expect to be taking up in the next 10 days to further address the concerns around KSU and its operations. I'm joined here at the table by CPE President Aaron Thompson. Specifically ask President Thompson to speak to the time constraints and the ability of KSU to get this on through the process. And I now, Mr. Chairman, would like for him to say a few words.
Thank you, Senator Givens, Mr. Chair. A couple of points I want to make before I talk about the timeline. It's obvious, you've heard me speak over and over again, the importance of KSU, the importance of helping KSU not only survive, and we need that $23 million by the end of the month, really. Just me put it in perspective. And this is not a joke. And we have to get that in place to do the things that we need to do. The point I will make around this bill is not necessarily whether it's for it or against it, but it is this. If we're going to do it, we need to do it. Because we're going to have to push this envelope to get enough people that's aligned into the post-secondary boards and commissions meeting, the nominating committee meetings, to get them on board and to align with all the things that we need to do with the presidential search, along with the actions that we're dealing with all the time. I worked well with the current board and with the current staff. So, but if we are going to have a new board, we need to get these folks seated soon. So this time frame that is put in Senate Bill 265 is one that I think is of urgency, and happy to answer any questions along those lines, but it's fairly simple. If we're going to do it, we probably want to do it fast.
Question? Senator Thomas?
Senator Wise, before I begin to ask questions, let me ask you this. Since we're in a committee now where we're not bumping up against other committee meetings or session, I'm just wondering how many questions can I ask? Because really there are 3 questions I'd like to ask Senator Givens, if I could.
Yes, sir. You may proceed.
Since we have some time.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Senator Gibbs, my first question to you is this, and my questions are pretty straightforward, so they shouldn't be convoluted, and it should be easy to understand. My first question is this to you. In light of the necessary vetting process that the governor would have to go through to make sure he complies with the political affiliation diversity that's required of the board, and just making sure that that competent, astute people are nominated, is the April 1st deadline a realistic timeline in your mind? Because it's not in mine. So I'd like for you to comment on that.
Sir Thomas, great question. We've had great conversations with the executive branch about this legislation. They do acknowledge it's going to be a challenge for them, but with the help of President Thompson getting those names in a timely fashion by this March date, and then moving on through rapidly the process, we do feel confident, based on conversations with the executive branch, that we can get this done.
Okay. May I ask two more questions?
Please proceed.
Okay. All right. Okay. I appreciate your answer, Senator Givens. But my next question is related. In the event that the governor is just not able to meet that time frame, because again, I think there's a lot to do in the next. Only talking 24 days. Isn't it safe to assume that the governor, like the legislature, is going to appoint competent, astute individuals, and therefore, based upon that assumption that we're all on the same page here, the governor and us as legislators, is it really necessary that this Senate confirm the new board members by April 14th?
Senator Thomas, it is, and I'll share with you why, and it relates to the other piece of companion legislation that we refer to as House Bill 250. There's a significant level of a vote of confidence that has to happen in us appropriating $23 million for KSU and trusting that money is going to be well spent and wisely spent. So the Board of Governance, this being the KSU Board of Trustees, should certainly be in place and confirmed by the Senate in a timely fashion for us to be able to place that vote of confidence, the taxpayers' money of $23 million, and invest it in that institution and basically turn it over to that board to say, please make this university shine as we think it can. So yes, we do feel confident it can be done. We also feel confident it's paramount that we get this done for Senate confirmation before we adjourn sine die on April the 15th.
Okay. My third question, now I'll let you turn it over to other members.
Please proceed.
Senator Givens, again for the sake of argument, let's assume that the Board of Regents is completely remade by April 14th. And let's assume, again being very optimistic, that it receives the $23 million that it needs just to survive. In your opinion, what happens next to KSU?
If the board is reconstituted,
let's assume that
House Bill 250 has
passed and it gets us $23 million,
written in such a way that we've got continued CPE oversight and involvement and investiture in that institution. We've given it the funds to continue operation. We've put the parameters around it that I think you're going to see in the final work product of House Bill 250, which says we're going to have an outside entity continuing to do an ongoing evaluation of that process. I think that institution will shine. I think it will be the beacon on the hill that it can be for all of us in that post-secondary landscape. And so my prognostication, if I'm looking forward, is we're going to be bragging and talking about KSU in 3 to 4 years and saying, hopefully, respectfully, with very low humility, patting ourselves on the back for the brilliant work that we collectively have done to help this institution get to the right place. That would be what I hope happens.
Senator Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have several questions, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Please proceed with those.
Senator Wise, are you familiar with Senator Givens?
I've always wanted to look that nice and that young, but Senator Neal, I'm not quite there, man.
I was going to make a joke out of it. I'm gonna let you slide on that one.
Roll call.
Roll call. I'm very familiar with Kentucky State's history, and I'm very familiar with the lack of the General Assembly from its inception investing adequately in that university. It started as a college. And I'm also aware of how the General Assembly has kept it sized and not really prepared it to meet the future challenges that any growing institution would have to have. I can track that. My question to you, and this is very important, are you familiar with the General Assembly's history of inadequate funding of Kentucky State University? Its historical piece. Are you familiar with that?
Senator Neal, it would be easy for me to say no. I'm not.
Okay.
But I would be lying to you if I said no, I'm not. Now, I'm not going to tell you that I am a in-depth, knowledgeable professor as it relates to the historic funding of KSU, but I will share with you, having worked through the post-secondary education budget for a number of years, specifically around performance-based funding, and looking at the shares basis that we took for an extended period of years about funding all of our post-secondary institutions, and then filing legislation for multiple years in a row, 2013, 14, and 15, finally succeeding in getting post-secondary funding model moved from a shares base to a performance base, engaging with all of those institutions, sitting through a long interim session of a task force to arrive at post-secondary funding model that was signed off on by all of the institutions, including KSU. While I don't have a great depth of knowledge specific to the historic funding of KSU, I've got a good feel for the fact that they signed an agreement indicating their willingness to engage in that post-secondary funding performance model, along with us acknowledging and accepting the fact that we weren't going to carve into their base to move their resources to other institutions. So I've got a little bit of a feel for KSU funding.
I respect that response. However, I'm not sure Kentucky State had a choice to do anything other than to agree with the people who are going to fund it. But let me say this, did Kentucky State receive any money as a result at any point in time of that formula? Did it benefit in some way that I'm unaware of?
They benefited in the fact that historically their per FTE full-time equivalent investment of state taxpayer money was sizably larger than the other post-secondary institutions. And in realigning post-secondary funding under the model, they did not receive proportionate decline in their per full-time FTE as did the other institutions.
Obviously, that wasn't sufficient. We're here where we are. Let me ask you this. Do you recognize that it's going to take additional funding in order for Kentucky State to move beyond zero? Because the $23 million only takes them to zero, and that's welcome, of course. But in order for them to move into the next level, would you agree that there would have to be some additional funding? In fact, the information I have, there would need to be upwards to $15 million additional in order for it to be competitive and meet the challenges that it has to meet to move forward. Would you agree with that?
Senator, I'm going to agree with you. It's going to take additional money. It's going to take additional vision. It's going to take a change in the culture. It's going to take a realignment of the entire institution. And it's going to take a total reorganizational approach to the way that business happens at KSU. So money is one of the 5 or 6 things that I think are critical to us getting KSU to be what it can be.
So you agree with me?
I agree that it's one of the 6 things that that's going to have to happen at KSU for us to get to the right
Sounds
place.
to me like you agree with me. I just want to make sure we're on the same page. So let me ask you this then. Are you committed to CPE having sufficient time in this oversight along with Kentucky State to achieve the objectives? Because the information I have is that the request was for 5 years to meet the challenges that it has to face now, given what we understand. But it was cut back to 3 years, and I'm talking about the House Bill 250. You had nothing to do with this. I'm just trying to get your thinking on that.
Senator, I have not looked specifically at the 3 to 5 year question, but based on our conversation here tonight, that will be one of the things that I will look at.
Okay, and then lastly, I do get 10 more questions,
You're
Mr.
good.
Chairman.
You're good, Senator Neal. Please proceed.
Oh, no, I'm not gonna abuse the process. Let me ask you this then, Senator Wise. Senator Givens.
Senator Givens.
You begin to look like Senator Wise. It's late in the evening. You do understand that.
Max, my friend, I'm so sorry.
Well, both of you good guys. I mean, come on. Okay, this is something I really need to understand. I just want to be very frank with you. The discussion that's out there and what comes to me a lot is that people who, I'm generalizing, but people, specific individuals, have come to me and they're concerned that the moves that the General Assembly is making are moves to set up the university to fail, not to succeed. And I know you speak straight up, with me, Senator Wise the same. I'm just asking you directly, is there going to be total commitment to the success of this university, the maintenance of its historical mission, plus those things that will make it a state-of-the-art university, which I understand that is very much doable, given sufficient funding time and maybe those other 5 things you're talking about? Are you totally committed to that?
Senator Neal, let's talk about failure for just a moment. This gentleman sitting here beside me just a moment ago spoke about the import of the money that's needed and the timeliness of this money. So when we talk about failure, I think the place we've got to start is that failure to move by this General Assembly on this matter constitutes closure of KSU.
We agree on that.
So we have a choice to either move this institution forward or do nothing and this institution closes. And I'm not going to be willing for us to do nothing. But now moving forward is going to mean significant change, cultural change, financial investment, reorganization of this institution. And it's also going to mean that if all of these efforts don't succeed, then I'm going to need your commitment to assist me in finding a way forward that involves closure. Let me say that again. If we put in place a 3 to 5 year strategic plan, and at the end of that 3 to 5 year period, we haven't moved the needle, and this institution is back asking for more money to pay past due bills as a result of the failure of an administration that was in place and totally ineffective, then I'm hoping you'll stand with me to say this is not in the taxpayers' best interest. This is not in the students' best interest. We've got to find a way to move these students somewhere else where they can get an education worthy of the investment they're making and their families are making and the time that they're putting in, and we're going to close the institution. I stand with you today to say we've got to make this shine. But if we do everything we can do within our power and we fail, we'll have to close the doors.
Mr. Chairman, I mean, if you would please be patient with me.
You're fine. Please proceed.
My question was, will you do all that's in your power to maintain the historical mission, the institutional integrity, that which stabilizes and sufficiently invests in the university to meet its current challenges and the challenges that it will face going into the future. That's a yes or no?
Yes, that's a solid yes. But if I do everything within my power and that institution still continues to fail students after 3 to 5 years of time, effort, and money, the institution will deserve to close.
Well, let me say this to you, Senator Wise. I apologize, Senator Wise. Senator Givens, thank you. Let me say this to you. If you look at what has happened at Kentucky State, despite the General Assembly's historical deficiency, despite the General Assembly putting roadblocks in front of it, and I will document that to you, okay? Because I want you to have that information. I'm sensing that you don't have that information, and I hope that information will help you join with me in making a total commitment to the success of this university. I want you to understand, great people have been the result of the investment of those who are committed to this institution. Great people. And this institution, despite those deficiencies, and I know those deficiencies, despite those deficiencies in funding, has produced, and in fact, in recent years, has produced notwithstanding. I can demonstrate and show you that. And I think that what we ought to do is have I hate to lecture to you, and I apologize for that, but I guess I'm a little passionate about it because I've matriculated there. I know the history of this institution. I know the failures of the General Assembly. I know the narrative has been about this board that didn't do this, that, or the other. Well, we'll see what that's about. But historically, year after year, decade after decade, since slavery, and its institution, its institutional beginning, this General Assembly institutionally has not stepped up to the plate. And I can give you rhyme and verse. I can give you names. I can give you historical periods. I can give you dollars and cents. What I need from you, what this Commonwealth needs from you and me and everybody else that has a responsibility with all these other universities that when they didn't have the money and they cried broke, we stepped up and gave them that money. Then you take a little institution that's been compromised by this General Assembly historically, and then we're going to put it in a vice. No, I don't agree to that. What I do agree to is you and me and others working together in good faith to do all that we can so this university can prevail and thrive and contribute to this Commonwealth, of which it has done notwithstanding. That's what it's about for me. I need your commitment on that.
Senator Neal, I gave you my commitment a moment ago, and that commitment is still in place.
And thank you very much.
Your passion is well taken, and I'm going to speak to that for just a moment. And I appreciate you listening back to me, as I know you do, because you're well versed in speaking, but I know you well enough to know you're also a good listener. My commitment to you is real and genuine. The commitment to dollars, the commitment to time, the commitment to opportunity for this institution. But I'm also going to be committed to the taxpayers and the students. As you well know, there are other paths that these monies could follow. We could do different things to educate all of the students at KSU. In fact, one of our colleagues has filed a bill to effectively do that. I'm not a proponent.
To do what? I'm sorry. What is that?
There's a bill that's been filed to give full ride scholarships to all KSU students at any institution in the Commonwealth. Full ride scholarships. I'm not going to be an advocate for that approach because that would destroy KSU rapidly.
I agree with that.
But his point is well made. The money that we're spending effectively would grant all of these students a full ride scholarship. So as we have the conversations, I look forward to the passion that you're speaking with, the commitment that I've offered, and the work of our colleagues in this body to get this right. We need it for the students. We need it for the institution. We need it for the Commonwealth. But it's going to take some hard work, and it's going to cause people some pain along the way. So let's not be naive to the fact that we're just going to send money and turn our heads the other way. CPE is going to be involved day in and day out with the operation of that institution. This piece of legislation reconstructs the board. It's the first step. It's not the last step. We'll be back and revisit this institution again with further legislation this session, and I look forward to working with you so we can all get it right.
Well, let me just say one thing. I appreciate your commitment. I'm going to take that in good faith. I think you're offering it in good faith. I pledge that I will work with you. But I'm going to tell you something my daddy told me. He said, when you want something to happen, you make it happen. And that means that if you invest the time and effort that's needed in this instance or any other instance, and that's from the top, then it will happen. So I'm not looking for failure. I'm looking for success. And I know it would happen because notwithstanding the narrative that's been pulled out of the hat over and over again, which some may believe, I know that institution, and I know what it has produced, and I know what it's doing even as we speak today. So I'm trusting what you're saying to me. And I've worked with you before. I think we can work together going forward. Thank you, Senator Gibbons.
Thank you, Senator Neal.
Thank you, Senator Neal. Senator Denise Harper-Angel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Givens, the governor has proposed eliminating some institutions like Kentucky State from the performance funding formula for the next 2 years. Do you agree with that approach?
Senator Harper-Angel, I do not agree with that approach. I think you'll see that in the budget that we'll be proposing in the next few days. All the institutions worked hand in glove, and sometimes the hands came out of the gloves and they swung at each other's heads in that room as we were working through the performance-based funding model. So I say that in jest to say that each institution is fully vested. We do an annual, a 3-year review of that performance-based funding model. So in December of 2020, we gathered at the direction of CPE, specifically led by President Thompson here at the table. We gathered all the university presidents in December of 2020 and took another look at what I call version 1.2 of performance-based funding. All of the universities signed off on continuing forward with that performance-based model. And I'm confident that President Thompson would speak to the benefits of that model as we've moved graduation rates and gotten back on track to that 60 by 30 goal that CPE has set for post-secondary education in Kentucky. So I respectfully disagree with the governor saying that some institutions need to be funded outside of the performance model.
Just follow up, Mr. Chairman. But as Senator Neal said, KSU has not received an additional dollar since the formula was established in 2016. So perhaps it's just not fair to that institution.
So respectfully, Senator Harper-Angel, the inequity occurred prior to us funding the performance-based model. And the inequity actually occurred in favor of KSU and 2 or 3 of the other comprehensive universities. For years, the General Assembly overfunded KSU on per full-time equivalent students. So under the old shares model that we had prior to performance-based funding, those institutions all got significantly larger dollar investment per student educated as a result of the infusion of money from the state taxpayers. For KSU, instead of us normalizing that per full-time equivalent down as we did with all the other institutions, we recognized KSU's challenge and the role they played, and we left through the funding formula their full-time equivalent investment at a higher level than anyone else. So while they didn't receive additional new monies, they've been receiving substantially more money prior to us moving to the performance-based funding model, and we kept them whole.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Stivers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have several questions that I want to make sure that either President Thompson, who I have to have a certain sense of pride in since he's a Clay County-an like me, or Senator Givens can answer, but I want to make sure from kind of a simple point, there is a $23 million ask on the table right now for a supplemental appropriation. Am I right? Then I also want to understand where I've received various facts. I think during the administration of Raymond Burse, who was the president there 4, 5, 6 years ago.
Until 2016, I took over as interim 16 and 17. Yes.
And at that time, I believe when Mr. Burse was the president, there was about 2,300 students there.
There was about 2,100 students there enrolled. Not all had paid.
But
yes.
And he had to take some extraordinary steps. As I understood it, it wasn't, there were some who had not paid for several years, but others who would have been eligible to get Pell, CAP, KTG, the administration hadn't helped them apply. And there was close to 500 students. Is that accurate?
I can tell you from the standpoint when I went there. When I went there, obviously my goal was to save as many students, put in place a process to make sure that they graduated. In the process of me looking at that, looking at the bills, not wanting to kick any students out, if I could somehow figure out a way to keep them in, even if they owed some. We had somewhere around 400 to 500, in fact, that had not filled out the FAFSA that did get certain dollars, yes.
And then that was when you were there. How many did President Burse ask to leave because they either were asked to pay or did not pay?
When I took over, and I may have these numbers wrong, I wish Greg Rush was here or Travis may to help. When I took over, we had about 1,200 students that could be properly registered, if you will. Okay. But that year we recruited a lot more that did pay. So when I left, everybody was paying. Everybody was in good standing. And when I left, it was about 1,700 students.
And to that, because there are people who can pay, but then people who can also receive respective CAP, KTG, yes, Pell, all the plethora of potential funding mechanisms and assistance. Fair? And some of them yes, weren't doing that. That's part of the whole mix.
That's correct. Some had not filled out the FAFSA in order to know if they were even eligible. Yes.
Okay. Then I want to, during that period of time, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, during that period of time, we were given information about what the 4-year graduation rate was just prior to you getting there. Do you know what that was?
Prior to me getting there, I think the 4-year graduation rate, once again, I may get it wrong, it was in the teens. I think it was 14 or something along those lines. A couple of years before it was a little bit lower than that.
But it was single digits is what I was informed. Is that correct?
That's correct. I forgot what year it was, but yes.
And then after, just prior to you getting there, what was the graduation rate after 6 years?
The graduation rate, and I can only go by the cohort that we came in with, because so many students had been in the cohort that were then let go, if you will, for not paying. It really had a substantial effect on the future graduation rate. Right now, this may not be what you're asking. Right now, we're looking at the 2016-17, my cohort, 16-17 cohort. It will be close, I think, to 37%, something
after
like
6
that.
years.
After 6 years, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sir. Any other members, any other questions or comments? Senator Neal.
Little research here. I just want to make part of the record here. KSU program has a program of distinction. The agriculture program is one of the top 5 in the United States. It's fully accredited by SACO. It's historically strong programs in nursing, education, and public administration. It became a land-grant college in 1890 with permission to serve small farmers in all 120 Kentucky counties. I've talked about the strictures of the General Assembly and how it's dealt with this particular institution. There will be more discussion about that later. The graduation and retention rates have increased markedly in the past several years. 6-year graduation rates have increased from 18% in 2012 to 37.8% in 2021, and first-year retention rates have increased from 52% in 2013 to 70% in 2021. This is a institution, notwithstanding its challenges, is moving in the right direction. Now, we do know there's some budgetary issues. That's what the 23 million piece is about. But we also know and must understand that there has to be investment to ensure that this institution can meet its current and future challenges. This is an opportunity, it's a historic opportunity for this General Assembly to make a commitment to this institution, to contribute further and extraordinarily more than it has in the past to the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And it's going to be on our watch. We have an opportunity here. The question is, are we going to seize it? You have to make something happen if you want it to happen. And you know, you haven't heard me say a word against your bill, have you? You haven't said a word. Because notwithstanding everything that's happened, listen, we want people to do what you've already said. People of quality, committed to the institution, committed to its success, without any hidden agendas, and give them the support they need to ensure that success. And I invite CPE's oversight. I'm familiar with Dr. Thompson, his work, tremendous work. He's always done it with the highest integrity. I respect that. I think that's a good combination. So if you get that kind of board, and if you have the CPE engagement, and we make the sufficient investments, I don't see how it can fail. Given the history, since 1890, Kentucky State University is still standing. So we need to make that commitment. I trust that we will, and I look forward to it. I know that was a preach again, didn't I? That's you again, but I apologize for that. You're a learned man. I have great respect for you. You know that. We work together on many things, and I want to go forward with it. But I have no hidden agendas, and I'm hoping, and I trust you don't have any, but I'm hoping others that I haven't talked to don't have hidden agendas as well. We can make this happen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Neal. Just a brief comment for me. I've got one question here also for Senator Thomas. But Senator Givens, looking at the bill, and I'm very supportive. One of the things I do want to make note of, and I'd be remiss if I did not say this tonight, is there were some good people on that KSU Board of Regents, and there were some that I personally know very well, and I understand what we're doing here tonight, but I do think they had stepped up with some leadership and were trying to make the right decisions, and to do that with Kentucky State University. I am very supportive. But I did not want tonight for me to get away from me to not say that there was some people that were definitely doing their work for the betterment of Kentucky State and for the Commonwealth.
Senator Wise, I concur, and I'll speak briefly to that because we purposely wrote into the language that current KSU board members and previous board members may be considered by the committee for nomination. So we certainly applaud and appreciate the work. At the same time, it's going to be an opportunity for this executive, with the approval and confirmation by the Senate, for a totally new team to be put on the field. Now, a new team may involve some old players, but yes, and I appreciate your statement.
Thank you, Senator Givens. I'm going to close it out with Senator Thomas. That looks like the last questions for tonight. Senator Thomas.
Yeah. Chairman Wise, I have two questions for President Thompson, if I may.
Please proceed.
Thank you. First, let me say by prefatory remarks, President Thompson, I thought you did an excellent job when you were at Kentucky State. I was there when you were there. I thought you did an excellent job. So I want to state that first. However, at the time President Burst left and you came, and that was in 2016, that was the year that we implemented performance funding here in the state of Kentucky. Are you aware that he came to state government, came to the legislature and asked for $17 million of stabilization funds because he recognized that because of the nature of the student body at Kentucky State University and the fact that it had been historically underfunded, it needed these funds to stabilize itself, to be able to move forward and progress and become the kind of institution that we've been talking about this evening. Are you aware of that?
I am indeed. I worked with President Burst at the time, and even when I came in, I asked for that. To me, it wasn't purely stabilization. I was wanting to redesign and make it state of the art, where it provided a lot more. So this was an investment fund. We also had to build, even though we have Title III, I wanted to build a state-of-the-art student success process. So yes, sir. And I would agree that it's taken investment to actually build what's needed, because I want to be clear about this, even though you didn't ask me this. I want to say, even though KSU may have gotten more money per student, there was still a lack of what I consider to be a human infrastructure, programmatic infrastructure, process infrastructure. So I appreciate your 5 points. I just want to say parenthetically, because I think it takes all of that to build a state-of-the-art 21st century university, and to keep an HBCU that's thriving, that I believe is still very much needed in today's society. So that's where that money was going to. There's a couple of folks here now knows that I've had that conversation with them before, but that money was designed to really build out that process to make sure those students would have higher graduation rates, that we could get more students into the pipeline with our P-12 folks and so on. Long answer to your short question, but yes.
No, I appreciate your answer. And my second question is really a follow-up to questions raised by President Stivers, which is that is it not true that the KSU student body historically has been composed of students who are primarily first-generation college students who come from schools that may not have offered the best education, students who are challenged, students who have to work to be in school, and so therefore those students may start a little farther behind in terms of being college ready than what you might see at other institutions of higher education here in Kentucky. And so hasn't that been part of the challenge Kentucky State University has faced in trying to get students ready and graduated in a 4 or 5 year period?
Yes, and once again, my fellow Clay County here and I both can agree that if you're coming from a long-term, I would say, system of disenfranchisement, whether you're poor or whatever the case may be, first generation, you don't have a history of familial or communal inputs that aligns with you to basically understand the college experience. And many didn't really understand the high school experience. And to be honest with you, been in some cases, maybe not the best education from a high school experience that would allow them to have the academic levels to go in. So there's some social, emotional, cultural, socioeconomic, and academic issues. That was the argument that I made back in 17, you may remember, 16, 17. That's why you need a sustainable human infrastructure and other sorts of items to be put in place that is aligned clearly with a more one-on-one situation that would help these students succeed. Yes, historically speaking, institutions like KSU and others, because of a first-generation status, will tend to have a much lower retention and graduation rate, yes.
Thank you, Senator Thomas. Seeing no further questions on the issue at hand, do we have a motion on Senate Bill 265? Was there anyone else that was signed in to testify?
Gentleman on the right.
If you could make your way to the table, if you could just identify yourself for the record, please.
Push the button. Push the button.
There's a microphone. There's a button on the microphone there. Turn green. It's on. Thank you.
Okay, try this again. Good evening, Senators. My name is Richard Graves. I'm a 1981 graduate of Kentucky State University. I am the National Alumni Association President of Kentucky State. And to my left here is Mr. Barry Johnson. He is the Vice President of the Kentucky region of Kentucky State University. And we are alumni of Kentucky State, and we just have a few minutes, and we want to thank you all for letting us address you here.
Yes, sir. Please proceed.
I have these papers in front of me. They're not all my preparation notes. I apologize. I grabbed so much, but these are my family documents that kind of show that I am also a Kentuckian as well. My family owns 108 acres in Cumberland, Kentucky for years, and that's where we're from. So we're all homeboys, as they say in college. But I wanted to take this opportunity to come in and talk to you all about our great institution. Kentucky State University is a high-quality institution with excellent academic programs and an illustrious history. The institution has survived over 135 years, producing some of the most accomplished students and faculty members in the nation. One of its most accomplished graduates is Whitney M. Young, Jr., Executive Director of the National Urban League and organizer of the Historical March in Washington in 1963. Dr. Henry E. Chaney, one of the most profound professors of history the Commonwealth of Kentucky has ever produced. And attorney Pat Russell McLeod, a profound attorney, global professional order, and motivating speaker. Moreover, we have two legislators in the gust of the body are also graduates of KSU, Representative Derek Graham and our Honorable Senator Gerald Neal. Kentucky State University has consistently and successfully produced graduates from all backgrounds and went on to become physicians, lawyers, professors, scientists, teachers, engineers, and political leaders. Kentucky State University produces outstanding citizens and community leaders. Additionally, the impact of KSU has had on the community has unprecedented because of its special mission as a land-grant institution that is shared only with the University of Kentucky. From a financial point of view, for 135 years, Kentucky State University has done more with less. It produced an economic impact for more than $130 million to the Bluegrass higher education region, which includes counties of Anderson, Bourbon, Boyd, Clark, Fayette, Franklin, Jarrett, Harrison, Jessamine, Lincoln, Madison, Mercer, Nicholas, Scott, and Woodford. All of you know that Kentucky State University was born in 1887 out of the necessity to train African Americans to become teachers, to teach the growing number of school-age African Americans in the Commonwealth, at a time when the state of Kentucky had no desire to teach African Americans in its segregated institutions. Kentucky State University has developed into an institution that attracts students from various backgrounds. It has been a safe haven for underrepresented and underserved populations who desire to learn in a culturally and supportive environment. Kentucky State has also blossomed despite restrictive financial support. It has endured in serving the community despite a Kentucky State General Assembly that has historically neglected to support and nurture its growth and develop, and failed to provide critical investments to meet the ongoing challenges of the future. If you do not understand the history of inadequate support and make decisions without a full understanding of recognizing the General Assembly's complicated history of Kentucky State's historic challenge of equity, it will be difficult for you to see your obligations to meet this historical moment. The General Assembly can meet this opportunity to invest in Kentucky State University with the view of strengthening the institution, preserving its value, historic mission, reserving this institution's integrity, and giving it full support to meet the challenges that will push Kentucky State University to the next level. I can speak personally about the impact Kentucky State University has had on my life and the life of individuals who are members of the Kentucky State University National Alumni Association. It is why I'm here representing 28,000 alumni who know its value, its history, and call upon the Kentucky State General Assembly not to set up the university for failure, but to provide the required support to enable this institution to flourish and serve this community and the commonwealth of the higher levels. Despite the success of Kentucky State University has realized it has always had to operate with inadequate resources and with fewer resources than its sister institution. Unfortunately, the legislature has had a consistent history of undermining and underfunding Kentucky State University. I could point to examples of the beginning that the governor withholding the land grant funding for several years when KSU's land grant status was first awarded. But we're not here to focus. We're here to focus on the present and not the past. And we'll talk about the past at a later date. But the future and financial viability of KSU is so important to its alumni. What I'm asking you to do instead is to change this narrative, a governing body of the state of Kentucky, and give the Kentucky State University what it needs to be proactive and its planning so that it can effectively carry out its mission on a long-term basis. The questions I want to ask each of you are following. Senators, what action are you going to take to protect the history and the mission of Kentucky State University? Senators, what are you going to do to protect the current viability of Kentucky State University? On behalf of the Kentucky State University National Alumni Association, I request that you meet in the future of KSU by approving the $23 million needed for its viability and sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, testimony.
Yes, good evening, Chairman Wise, Senators. I will be brief. I'm sitting here as a Kentucky State University alum, the class of 1994, but I'm also sitting here as a taxpayer, and I'm also sitting here as a business owner who pays payroll taxes and occupational taxes. So some of y'all are familiar with that. And I echo the sentiments of the senators who spoke about the history, and Richard who spoke about the history of us needing that $23 million to keep it going. You know, as an alum, been out of college now 25 plus years, we have great memories, and those who've matriculated through their respective universities, you can take those memories away. But the students who are there now, that's why we're sitting here. The students who are there now who have gone through a heck of a time with COVID and having to now face the possibility of losing their home. You know, college was our home when we were there. And, you know, looking at them and having to have an answer of why they can't return back to their school, that's a tough question to answer. So I sit here on behalf of the Alumni Association, but I also sit here on behalf of an alum with a parent who has a student there, and the students who are there now. Thank you for your time.
Very welcome. Thank you all so much for your testimony. Greatly appreciated. Seeing no further questions and no further testimony, a while ago I did ask for a motion, but it was kind of inaudible there, so I'll take that motion again. Do we have a motion made by Senator Kerr? Do we have a second? Second by Senator Southworth. Mariah, if you would, please call the roll.
Senator Carroll.
Aye.
Senator Givens. Aye. Senator Harper Angel.
Mr. Chairman,
Cast your vote and please explain.
I vote aye. However, I believe that if we don't have the necessary funding to support KSU, we're just setting them up to fail. I hope that we'll take a good look at 250 when it comes over and find the necessary funding. Thank you.
Senator Higdon. Senator Kerr. Senator Meredith. Senator Neal. Senator Southworth.
Explain my vote, Mr. Chairman.
Please cast your vote and explain.
I'm casting an aye vote, and I just wanted to thank the sponsors and everybody that's been working on this for such a long time, and I also appreciate several of the alumni reaching out to me in particular. Some of the ones who have been there before, the last few years, we keep talking about the turmoil, the last few years, but when we get back further, then it helps me sort of smooth out what exactly is going on, and then where do we make this right. So I'm looking forward to hitting a reset button. I like the way that this is worded. We need to get a reset button hit. Doesn't necessarily mean, as we heard, getting all new people that have no clue what they're doing. Certainly picking and choosing through to cull out maybe the people that aren't as helpful and keep the ones who are, and then get our feet under us and move forward. So look forward to this is a great first step. I'm glad we're not taking this all in one gigantic chunk. I like this little pieces at a time here. We can all sort of flip through the individual pieces and make sure we have this really done well, because I really hate omnibus bills, and this is certainly a great way to do this. One piece, and then next week and following weeks, hopefully we'll see more pieces of this and put it all together. Thank you.
Senator Stivers. Senator Thomas.
Mr. Chair, I would like to explain my aye vote.
Please cast your vote and explain.
And I will make every effort to do within 3 minutes. I want to say two things, and in my mind, they're not contradictory. For me, closure is not an option for Kentucky State University. However, Kentucky State University must succeed. It must succeed. And I think, given the right amount of resources and the dedication by this legislature, it can do that. It can thrive. I want to be clear about the narrative. The reason Kentucky State University is in this position is not because of any fraud or theft by the previous administration. It made some bad decisions trying to achieve the goals that were set by Kentucky State, set by this legislature, but it could not achieve because of the performance funding model. I have to be very honest. I said in 2016 that I was in favor of performance funding. Okay, and on the floor, I voted for it. But I also said at that time, you can go back and look at the history, that I thought Kentucky State University ought to be excluded from that model for 4 years. I said that back in 2016 when I voted for performance funding. Well, history has borne out that what I said at that time, was indeed correct. The fact of the matter is that as of today, March 7, 2022, Kentucky State University has never received $1 from performance funding, and that has continued to penalize it and push it further back and behind the 8 ball. Okay. Kentucky University has had some good leaders. President Burst, I thought, was an excellent president. President Mary Smith was an excellent president. President Mary Sykes was an excellent president. And I'm very sincere. And I told President Thompson this. When he was president, I thought he did an excellent job. I mentioned that to him. So there are really a number of good leaders at Kentucky State University, but you've got to have the resources to be put in place. University of Kentucky, which is in my district, can't succeed and be top level in football and basketball without the resources behind it. You just cannot succeed without having the resources. So what I want to see this time around, as I had indicated in 2016, is put the money behind Kentucky State University. The $23 million, folks, just gets us to the starting line. That's all it does, okay? And if we don't get the $15 to $17 million that's needed to really begin to make this university a great place, then it will fail, okay? So I say all that to let you know where I am in Kentucky State University. And we've got to put the resources behind it to succeed. It must succeed. Having said all that, Mr. Chair, I do vote aye.
Senator West? Aye. Senator Wilson? Aye. Chair Wise?
Aye. The bill does pass. I'm going to go back real quick. Senator Neal had asked to explain his vote. I'm going to give him the courtesy and the opportunity to do so within the allotted 3 minutes.
I want to thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Givens, I look forward to working with you for a successful conclusion of this matter. I trust that we can do this. I have to go back to my dad telling me this, because every time I embark upon something, I found it to be true. If you want something to happen, you make it happen. You do those things that are necessary for it to happen. I'm convinced by this testimony today that you're committed to that end result. And I look forward to working with you to achieve that result. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Neal. The bill does pass on a 13-0 vote. I want to thank all the members for the dialogue tonight. We are adjourned.